Hey, Media People podcast listeners. If you enjoy the podcast, then you're going to love our newsletter, appropriately named the Media People Newsletter. Delivered right to your inbox, each edition is a mix of original and curated content designed to feed your curiosity while aiding in personal development. On top of more podcasts, we'll connect you with articles, interviews, and industry events. Subscribe at mediapeople.ca/newsletter or go to mediapeople.beehiiv.com. That's BEEHIIV. Thanks for listening to the Media People podcast, lively and insightful chats with the people who power the media industry. I'm your host, Victor Genova. For more episodes, you can go to mediapeople.ca or subscribe wherever you get podcasts, including youtube.com/@mediapeoplepodcast. Views expressed by participants are personal. Heads+Tales Co-Founder and Co-CEO Amanda Shuchat is part of a team that's flipping the agency model on its head. Heads+Tales offers best-in-class integrated marketing services while focusing on high-performance coaching to foster greatness. And Amanda is ideally placed to disrupt the agency model. Her career begins as a PR intern with strategic objectives and continues into senior roles at Hill+Knowlton, Citizen Relations International, and Middle Child. The roster of clients Amanda has worked with is equally as impressive and include Kraft, Pfizer, HP, Motorola, Canada Goose, and Endy, to name a few. Amanda Shuchat stops by to chat about her early life in Toronto, completing high school in Israel, buying and reselling Yogen Fruz to local elementary schools, why she studied journalism, her career in PR, and taking the entrepreneurial leap with Heads+Tales.
Heads+Tales is a first-of-its-kind agency that really invests in its people, unlike any other agency out there. Our belief is that if we truly can invest in our people, we will get excellence in return. My role is co-founder and co-CEO. I started it just over a year and a half ago with my partner, Katie Moore, my better half, as I like to say. And my role is about hacking culture. It's about finding the most high-performing talent in the country. It's about taking the right, most calculated risks and trying to build an agency model that we believe is the future.
Amanda, thank you so much for stopping by today. Let's go back to the beginning. You're a Toronto native, born and raised, right?
That's correct.
You like to say that you've got, could we call it a hyper-driven upraising? Because even though you spent pretty much, we'll say, all of your time in Toronto, you moved around quite a bit.
Yeah, I definitely did. I definitely had an unusual upbringing. I was in Toronto. I was born to an entrepreneurial father and an academic mother. My parents split up when I was about 6. And we moved around a lot. My mom struggled with depression, and I went to live with my dad full time when I was 9. He was building a business. He's an entrepreneur himself, and I definitely think there's some genetic and energetic gene there that I caught. And I grew up very quickly. I was taking care of my little brother. I was doing the laundry at a very young age. We were, taking a taxi to the grocery store to buy food and living off cereal and ice cream. My dad was around, but I became very exceptionally independent at a very young age.
That independence, did that make it easy for you to make friends? Because if you're moving around quite a bit, is it safe to assume that you were also moving schools as well, too?
I did move schools a little bit, but that was a little bit in my control. I've always been a very extroverted person. I've always really enjoyed being social and making friends and making those connections. A lot of the friends I made in my very early childhood are still my close friends today. And I very much became a part of their families. I loved being in their homes and really craved that sort of stable family unit that I didn't have. So making friends happened that way. And then, it also came to a point where I had the opportunity to decide where we wanted to live so I could go to school with my friends. My dad sort of gave me that opportunity at one point. So it was definitely an interesting dynamic.
Why do you refer to yourself as being a rebellious teenager?
When I was 15, my dad, we had moved around a lot. He was what I'll call a serial monogamist, and we lived with someone he was engaged to, and they were splitting up. And I really saw an opportunity there when they were splitting up to really pitch my dad on a program I had heard about that I could go live in Israel for a year. And I made a PowerPoint presentation. I filled out all the forms. I wrote the check. All he had to do was sign it. And I really pitched him on sending me there. And I ended up going and living in Israel for a year. And it was the best experience of my life, even though I was terrified when I first left and only 15. When I came back, when I was closer to 17, I would say that's when sort of the rebellion sort of started. I came home and my dad was very much, great, you're back. You can drive your brother to where he needs to go. You can make dinner. You can do the laundry. And as any 17-year-old would, I sort of said, fuck that. I don't know if I can swear here or not.
Absolutely. Go for it. Fuck yes.
And sort of had this rebellion. My close friends that I had lived in Israel with, I lived in an American program in a dorm. Three of them were from Woodstock, New York. And I sort of said to my dad, I'm not doing this. I have other options. I'm going to go live with my good friends in Woodstock, New York. I didn't want to take money from my dad, so I took a bus there. I lived with one of my close friends, who's still very much one of my close friends, and her family. I finished high school by correspondence, and I worked in a local restaurant and coffee shop. So it was definitely an unusual high school experience, but one that definitely built character and resilience.
Let's talk about your time in Israel. Where did you discover the program? Let's start with that first.
So I had an old neighbor, because we moved around a lot, that I had seen, and they had told me that their daughter had just come home from this high school program in Israel where you go live on an agricultural high school, you learn in English, you're with other English-speaking kids, you live in a dorm. And I just thought it was really interesting. I had always sort of been someone that took the path less traveled, and I thought this would be a great sort of thing to try.
When Israel is in Western news, much of the focus is on military conflict within the region. And I'm just speaking in terms of personal safety. How did that news narrative factor into your decision to move there for high school? Because I believe you were there in 2000 during the second Intifada.
I had a Jewish upbringing. I went to Jewish day school until the 6th grade. And part of that upbringing made me very connected to Israel. I had been there one time before for my grandparents' 50th anniversary. And it was a big part of understanding the culture that made me feel safe about it and knew it was an amazing place. When I left for Israel, the Intifada hadn't started yet. It started shortly after I arrived. But even when I was there, I still felt a sense of safety. Maybe it was somewhat naive, but it was also the way the media reports on it. And, that sort of bridges into another part of my career, which I'm sure we'll get to. But I was in an agricultural high school. It felt very safe. I had no issues. I didn't see anything on that realm that was remotely disturbing. But my parents at home were seeing the news and seeing, what it was going on over there. And they were calling saying, should we pull her out? Are you hearing bombs? Are you seeing anything? And there was none of that. So the way it looked on the news was simply not my reality of living there. I had a really exceptional experience living there. And Israel is one of the most remarkable countries in the world. So just an exceptional place to live and explore.
And I've heard Tel Aviv is completely different from anything else in the Middle East. And even Jewish friends of mine have said, Tel Aviv, you can't even really compare it directly to some of the other cities in Israel.
100%. That's the really fascinating thing about Israel is that, you can drive through the entire country north to south in about 8 hours and experience so many different types of things. So it's really like nothing else out there and something everyone should see regardless of their religion or political beliefs.
I always ask my guests what their first job is, and I get a lot of retail, I get a lot of babysitting, people working in quick service restaurants, but you were reselling Yogen Fruz. Have I got that correct to your peers?
My actual first job was in quick service like everyone else. It was at Yogen Fruz. The way I got that job was reselling Yogen Fruz. So in high school, in the 10th grade, I took a course on entrepreneurship. And one of the projects was to set up a small business. Essentially, what I did was broker a discount to buy local Yogen Fruz in bulk and then sort of host frozen yogurt days at a local elementary schools for a profit. Looking back, I'm not sure why I was looking to profit off young kids, but my entrepreneurial spirit shone through when I proposed this idea to a local Yogen Fruz franchisee, and he offered me a job, and then I worked there.
Do you think your father had any influence that directly or indirectly? Because you mentioned that he was an entrepreneur. Like, did you find that growing up, you always had that second option in your mind? It's like, I can get a job or I can be my own boss, which I don't think a lot of people have instilled in them at an early age or see that as an option.
I absolutely would credit my dad to this. I think I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. My dad is an entrepreneur. His dad was an entrepreneur. My grandmother, his mother, owned a series of A&W franchises. It's definitely in our bloodline, but then it's also a mentality, the way that it's spoken about. And so it was just definitely something that was on my radar from a young age, whereas other families might be encouraging their kids to, go to med school or law school. My creativity and independence was always embraced as you can do anything.
Why did you choose to attend Ryerson University and why did you pick journalism?
I picked journalism after I lived in Israel, and I talked a bit about how, the media covered everything that was going on there. I really was fascinated with that. I was fascinated with the way media gets covered. And I also really enjoyed writing. Writing was such a passion of mine, and I thought that this would be a great way to bridge those two things. Why I chose Ryerson was because it was, and I believe still is, the best journalism program in the country.
How did that shift then from, say, journalism to public relations? Because there was someone else I had on the podcast. I forget who it was. They studied journalism as well. I wasn't sure if it was at Ryerson. And they were evaluating journalism jobs. And they just saw that it was going to be very difficult for them to make it. So that's why they started to stream into PR. Was that the case with you?
So for me, it was a little bit different. I did journalism. I went into the magazine. After 2 years, you sort of go into a very specific stream. I chose magazine feature writing because I loved writing. I loved feature stories and creative writing. And I learned very quickly that I was not cut out for it. While I loved writing, long form writing is a very independent, introspective thing. And I really thrived from working in social environments and being with others. And I realized that while I wanted writing to be one part of my job, I didn't truly love being a writer all the time. It didn't spark joy for me the way that I thought it would. I had always really excelled in school at projects. I really always took them to the next level, tried to put my own creative flair on them. And I had met someone who worked in PR and was talking to her, and a light bulb kind of went off that this is the flip side of the coin. This is where I can really use my journalistic background working with media. I can do a lot of writing and positioning and strategic thinking. And I could also have that creative project element. So that's how I bridged it.
How did you land your first internship with Strategic Objectives? And what did being an intern at Strategic Objectives entail?
I landed the internship. So I reached out by email to a whole bunch of PR agencies and just said I was graduating. I was really interested in an internship and just tried to reach out to as many people as I can. I landed the job through an interview. I remember that they asked me a question of, what would you do to launch a new type of lip balm? And they gave me a little brief on the spot. And I think I just came up with, I don't even know what my response was, some tactics that they deemed to be good enough. And I got the job. I started a week after I graduated Ryerson. What did I do as an intern? An intern does everything, and it is the best, most priceless training ground for anyone in their 20s I always tell people who are going into PR that you should really try to intern in an agency. Even if you don't think agency is for you, the experience and knowledge you'll get is just so invaluable and can't be matched. So I did everywhere from pitching media to writing to monitoring to doing any sort of errands that needed to be done for a media tour. Anything that needed to be done, I would do. There's really no strict job description for it and no 2 days that are the same.
How did things change as you progressed through your time at Strategic Objectives? Because you started as an intern, and within a year you moved into an account coordinator role and then a consultant role. So how did your duties evolve, and how did your client list evolve too?
I moved very quickly. I was always very driven. I really liked the work that I was doing, and everything I was doing, I just received more responsibility as I went. So it was, I had more ownerships over the same types of things. I still pitched media, but by the end, I was, leading media tours versus preparing someone else to go on them. And in PR, my client mix changed quite a bit, which is very common. A lot of times, you have clients that are retainer-based clients who you work on all the time. And then you have projects that, come for a few months and then they go away. So the beauty of agency is that you have the opportunity to work on a lot of clients and a lot of different types of clients and industries, which really diversified my experience.
How do you get to know the client though? Do you just spend time with them? Do you spend a lot of time just reading up on other articles about them? Like, how deeply do you have to throw yourself into their business, their vision, or their message to really be very good at supporting them?
You need to really understand the essence of your client's brand, what their challenges are, and what they're up against. There's a number of ways to do that. There's research. You need to read up on your client's brands. In today's day and age, you need to be in tune with their social media. You need to be able to be reading what news articles there are on them, all to really get a pulse on them. Nothing replaces one-to-one interactions. Some of the client relationships I've built over the years have become, really rewarding relationships. And that's what helped us work together as partners, really, to take things to the next level. How much you need to know their industry. You do need to know their industry. You need to be committed and almost obsessed to really understand it in order to get a sense of what they're up against. But I think there's a bit of a myth that you need to know more about your client's industry than they do. In the agency world, particularly in PR agencies, a lot of traditional PR agencies have silos for this reason. So when I was at my next role at Hill+Knowlton, I worked in their technology practice. And it was that belief that I should become an expert in tech. I should really understand everything in the tech world, and that would make me able to serve my clients better. At Heads+Tales, our ethos is a bit of the opposite. So we are not industry specific. We do not have silos. In fact, on clients we have that are in the same industry, we have different teams working across them. And our belief is that we are expert communicators. We are experts at driving conversation and understanding culture and figuring out a way how to hack it. And that's what our expertise is. I will never understand the automotive business better than Hyundai will. I will never understand the technology business better than Apple will, but what I will know better than them is how to take their brand and insert it into that conversation. So that's our belief, and it's definitely a big debate.
Hill+Knowlton, that was your next move, and you were a consultant there, and your client base changed. But something interesting about this is that you say that this is your first crack at big agency life. So let's start right there. Why was that important for you to move into a big agency? And what did you learn in a big agency like Hill+Knowlton that is informing what you're doing now at Heads+Tales?
I like this question because I think there is something out there where big agency had this allure. Hill+Knowlton is one of the oldest, biggest, and best PR agencies in the world on a global scale. And there was something in me that, A, wanted to know if the grass was greener. I only had one job. It's human nature. And B, wanted to really see what it was like in one of these places to really understand what would be like. I got to understand what a best-in-class, large-scale global agency functions like. And then I got to mix that with the more entrepreneurial side of experience that I got at Strategic Objectives. And all of those experiences are invaluable to me now as an agency leader. And as I look to say, we have this belief, Heads and Tails is built on this belief that the agency model is antiquated and could become extinct if we don't evolve with the times. And so part of that is saying, what did I learn from all of these other incredible agencies? I have positive things to say about my experience at all of them, and I wouldn't be who I am today without all of them. What can I bring from those experiences to Heads and Tails? And then what were the things that maybe I didn't fall in line with or believe in as much, or that I think are becoming outdated, and how can I change those?
We're going to take a quick break. Enjoying this episode? Of course you are, or you wouldn't have made it this far. Complement your listening experience by subscribing to the Media People newsletter at mediapeople.ca/newsletter or at mediapeople.beehive.com. It's a mix of original and curated content designed to feed your curiosity while aiding in personal development. On top of more podcasts, we'll connect you with articles, interviews, and industry events. Subscribe at mediapeople.ca/newsletter or mediapeople.beehive.com.
You then went freelance. Tell us what the story was behind why you decided to go freelance. And then I want to talk about that a little bit further as to how that might have informed what you were doing with Heads and Tails.
Going freelance in full transparency was a little bit more circumstantial. My fiance at the time had accepted a role in Atlanta, and I was moving there with him. I didn't have a US visa. I couldn't get an official job. And I thought freelance would be a great way to continue to work while I was still in the US. Working independently and finding my own business helped me to level up quickly.
This must have really informed Heads and Tails because I imagine you're starting to lay a lot of the groundwork, not necessarily for the agency in the long run, but just for yourself, because in this instance here, as a freelancer, you are your own business.
Yes, exactly. I think, when you work in an agency, especially a big agency, you can be the best agency, account management, strategic leader in the world, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to excel at leading a business and driving up that new business development and bringing in your clients. So it's a very different muscle that you need to learn to flex.
When you accepted the VP role at Citizen Relations International, did it come with a portfolio of clients that you were responsible or accountable for, or was that going to be the teams below you? And then as a VP, you kind of, I don't know if floating in between clients to make sure everything is going okay is the right term. And I'm not trying to diminish what a VP does, but kind of something interesting I really find when I speak to people and they speak passionately about what they were doing early on in their career is that sometimes they have trouble letting go of those duties. Like they enjoyed being a player, and now that they have to be a coach and they're telling people how to play, it's a bit of a difficult move for them. Did you find that you had that when you made the jump to VP, or not the case at all?
So my experience was a little bit different. When I joined Citizen Relations, I actually joined as a senior account manager, and I worked my way up relatively quickly to VP. And what I loved, first I was a senior manager and then a director and a senior director and then VP. So what I really loved about Citizen was that it really gave me that I want to call it an entrepreneurial runway. So what I mean by that is it was a growing place. It was in its infancy. It's grown to be quite a sizable and substantial agency today. And it gave me the opportunity to say, you're very driven, take this, run with it, grow it. And if you can, we'll promote you and we'll reward you. And that was the exact kind of environment that I thrived in and that I try to create for my team today. So as a senior manager, I was given clients and I was the quarterback. The senior manager role, I always call it the quarterback role. You're managing up, you're managing down, you're the one with the ball. You have to have eyes on the ball at all times. As I got more senior, yes, it was learning how to delegate that more. And as a VP, yes, I was delegating more to the team versus necessarily quarterbacking the day-to-day work. I was making sure strategy always maintained in line. I was nurturing those client relationships. I'm a big believer in the art of client service. But what was interesting about my VP role at Citizen and what I think led to me getting the role to start Middle Child was that I worked on a lot of new business pitches. Citizen was exploding at the time. We had a lot of great opportunity to bring in big clients. And I worked on pitches that we won for Loblaw and Molson and a number of other big brands. And that's when my new business development obsession came into play.
This is an interesting topic for me. So I'm in sales. I'm at an organization that has a sales department and a sales team. But I've noticed on the agency side that there isn't really anyone formally with a sales title. And I've noticed that it's usually up to a lot of the top brass, the VPs and the managing directors, to kind of act as the point person for lead generation. And then a business development team gets involved to help pitch and so forth. Would you say that at Citizen, or even when you were at Middle Child as the managing director, would you say that this was the first time that you really had an eye on sales and bringing in new clients, or it was really part of your portfolio of responsibilities more so than at any other agency?
Yes, it was definitely more part of my portfolio more than at other agencies, but almost just due to the fact that I was now part of the senior leadership team. And so that's what my role became as I became more senior. I think what's really interesting about agency and PR agency in particular is that oftentimes we're looking for unicorns. Whereas a lot of creative agencies have a strategy team and a creative team and an account team. In PR, we wear all the hats. So we're coming up with the ideas, we're managing the client, we're managing the timelines, we're running the strategy, we're bringing in all of the new business. And that made it really interesting. I think it is a sales role, new business development, but the way it works in our industry is that it's very hard to have just a sales role for what we are selling, because the clients want to be sold to by the team that is then going to work on their business long term. So that's a big thing that we actually really pride ourselves on at Heads and Tails is we don't do the traditional bait and switch. So, there's this sort of industry myth where a lot of big agencies will bring in the A team to the pitch, all the really senior people, they'll wow the client, they'll win the business. And then on day one of working on it, they bring in a more junior team and you never see those, the initial pitch team again. We never do that. We only bring into the pitch the team that is going to be working on your business. We've brought interns to pitches. We bring account executives to pitches. Whoever is going to be the ones actually working on your business, that's who you're going to meet. And so we have that line of continuity for the client and that transparency.
At this point, would you say being the managing director at Middle Child was the biggest achievement professionally in your career?
100%.
Let me ask you a quick question about this, though, because you're 31, you stepped into the role, and you said you were grappling with imposter syndrome, even though up until this point, you've had a pretty stellar career. I mean, you were VP prior to this at Citizen. So where did that imposter syndrome come from, considering you were coming off a lot of success at Citizen?
I was very proud of my success at Citizen. And I had earned that success when I had always known I had wanted to run an agency at some point. I had talked about that with my boss. And this was the opportunity. I didn't step into a new role. I was given the opportunity to start Middle Child. It didn't exist. So I was building an agency from the ground up. It was me and two other junior people. And it was a big leap. It was an amazing opportunity because I got to learn how to build a business with the safety net of having the other, it was owned by the same parent company as Citizen. So I had that support system and that network there. I was able to bring 3 of my clients from Citizen who wanted to join me over to me to start Middle Child. So I had a lot of great foundation there. And so it was the best of both worlds. I definitely had a safety net, but I was starting it from nothing. It was all on me. And so it was very much this pressure, most of it that I probably put on myself to show everyone that I was more than just an amazing account lead and that I really could build a business and that I really was an entrepreneur. So I definitely had this imposter syndrome in the first year. I would go into new business pitches as the head of this new agency, and it all hinged on me, not the Citizen name, not the large team behind it, but really you were buying Amanda. And, there were days that I went in and really thought someone was just going to stand up and say, who gave this little girl an agency? And it never happened. And I just kept going. And after about a year, it sort of kicked in that I was really born to do this and I could do it. And I was the best person to do it.
Do you remember that exact moment? Was it after a pitch or a win or something where you said, I'm done with this imposter syndrome. I've been doing this for a year and we've only been going upwards. I've got to start celebrating my success. I'm clearly not a fraud if everything's going in the right direction under my leadership.
I wish I could say there was one aha moment where it all just became clear, but I think it was more just the culmination over time of getting those little wins in my pocket and building up that credit in my own bank so I could eventually believe it. And also coming to the realization consciously that I was doing this and doing the work on myself to really understand how my mindset was either going to hinder or help me moving forward.
You mentioned that it was yourself and two junior people starting the agency. Does that mean you were even doing some of the mundane startup responsibilities like drafting invoices, making sure the network is connected in the office, getting the office, making sure the office has telephones? Like, was that part of it as well, too?
So that's really interesting. So it was me and two juniors. And what I would say is I definitely went from having a big team where I was delegating a lot of things to becoming right in the trenches again, which is very humbling and actually, I think, a really essential experience for a leader. So I had to roll up my sleeves. I wasn't doing things like invoicing and looking for the office because I was part of this big network. So I was able to use their shared services for things like IT and HR, and use their office space. So those were all really big perks as well. But I was doing things like drafting media pitches and writing key messages and even doing media monitoring and media relations. So I really went back to my roots, which was actually really healthy because that's what helped you get closer. And, Katie and I both did it again quite a bit when we started Heads and Tails last year. It helps you get closer to the reality of what actually is resonating on the ground floor.
Okay, so let's bring things full circle. Heads and Tails, where did that initial idea come from? Like, when did you finally say to Katie, or maybe Katie said it to you, we need to move forward with this?
When we were coming back from the pandemic into the office at Middle Child, we asked the team, what do you want coming back into the office? What would make you excited about this? And we thought they were going to say things like, we want a beer fridge and we want all you can eat sushi and snacks and things like that. And that was actually not the response we got at all. We got, I need coaching. I need therapy. I need help. I'm
Really?
struggling from a mental health perspective. Yeah, I need support. And this was really eye-opening for us. And at the time, I was deep into the beginning first few seasons of Billions, where they have this character, I don't know if you've watched it, Dr. Wendy Rhodes. And she is essentially a psychiatrist, a coach in this big hedge fund. And she coaches all of these, stereotypical hedge fund men and she would really build them up and kind of unleash whatever insecurities and issues they were dealing with. And then they'd be able to go out and make billions of dollars for the company. And so I came up with this idea of we need our own Wendy Rhodes. We need a coach internally who can help our team deal with not just professional development, but personal goals and issues as they come up. And we had both worked with Barbara Morris Blake. She's our leadership coach now at Heads and Tails. I started working with her when I was at Citizen and became very close with her over the years. And we kind of call her a magical unicorn, where if over the years, we had someone who was struggling with confidence or couldn't get out of their own way or dealing with some of those more soft skills, we'd usually try to have them meet with Barbara, and then she would really help them unleash that, and it would really take their career to the next level. So we thought we want to take this to the next level. And we thought this was a really great idea for an agency. And around the same time, I was coming back from my second mat leave, and we had just won a Strategy Magazine Agency of the Year for the fifth time out of 6 years that we were even eligible. And, we had this great experience at Middle Child. We loved the team. We loved our clients. And we had built this whole agency with our own blood, sweat, and tears as if it was our own. But at the end of the day, it wasn't our own. Someone else owned it. And I'm forever grateful for the opportunity to build a business with that sort of support and safety net, and that the people there believed in me enough to give me that opportunity. But we really wanted to do it for ourselves and do it on our own terms.
Where did the name come from for Heads and Tails?
The name was born from the notion of flipping the coin. We believe the work is simply one side of the coin. Call it tails. Our work is tails after all. And our agency name is Tales, Tales. The people who do the work are the heads. So our belief is to offer best in class results from the best in the business. We have to flip the coin. If we invest in the people, and a lot of companies say they invest in people, but what are they really doing to really do that? If we invest in them and make sure they're not burnt out and that they are creatively recharged, then that's how we believe we're going to get the best results for our clients.
How does the company look today versus day one, which I believe was January 2023? That's when you guys opened?
Back in January 2023, it was Katie and I at my dining room table. We were excited and also scared shitless. Today, we're more than 15. We've experienced some real whirlwind growth in our first year and a half. We've secured some of our dream clients like Canada Goose and Endy, and we've worked on some of the most interesting programs of our careers. So it's definitely changed since day one. And if you ask me again in another month, I would bet that it will look completely different as well.
Okay, so let's pretend you're unplugging. You're on social media or you're watching the news and you see a brand caught up in crisis. Do you look away from it and go, nope, I'm not bringing my work home with me? Or do you kind of look at that and go, I wonder how they're managing that?
I think it's all integration. I definitely don't look away. A lot of how I'm learning is with cases like that, whether it be an issues management scenario like that, or a cultural opportunity to see how brands are showing up with media, to see how brands are showing up on social media, and see what they're doing right, what we would do differently. So it's a constant learning, and it's something that keeps me on my toes. I think, what PR is today versus a year ago, 5 years ago is completely different. And this is not an industry you can coast in. You need to be on your toes. You need to be a lifelong learner that is constantly staying up to date on not only what's right now, but having your finger on the pulse of what's next.
Amanda, if anyone listening to this wants to get in touch with you to learn more about what Heads and Tails can do for their business, how can they get in touch?
Please, I welcome anyone to reach out. They can reach out to me on email. My email is amanda@headsandtails.ca. So that's heads and tails, TALES.ca.
This has been a great chat. You ready for rapid fire questions?
Okay, let's do it.
The campaign you're most proud of?
So you are forcing me to choose between all of my children, just one. So I actually can't rapid fire this one. I see them in two phases. There's ones that are marketing excellence that really push culture, like the Heinz ketchup pack, which we won PR of the campaign of the year for. And then there are those that are passion projects and those that really make a difference. So we launched the Toronto Holocaust Museum last year. We recently just created a new Where's Waldo style book with safe haven designed to raise awareness for 1 in 100 kids with medical complexities. Our How Many Laws Did You Break Today campaign with Match International Women's Fund. All of these have been true privileges in my career.
Your favorite movie?
Troop Beverly Hills hasn't changed since I was 5.
If Hollywood were to make a movie based on your life story, who would you want to play you?
This is the hardest and best question. I'm going to say Scarlett Johansson, the ultimate combo of brains and beauty with a bit of humor.
My follow-up, if Hollywood were to make that movie based on your life story, what would you call it?
I'm going to go with big hair energy, and it's a bit of a mix of Erin Brockovich meets Bridesmaids.
Your favorite book?
She's Come Undone by Wally Lamb is what really made me fall in love with fiction.
Your favorite song?
Free by Florence and the Machine. Anything Florence and the Machine.
The best advice you have ever received?
to be the person that I needed growing up.
That's a good one. My signature closing question, if you weren't in media, what would you be doing and why?
I would be writing novels. I talked about my love of writing, and this has always really been a big dream for me. I love to write. I love to read. I may also want to dabble in interior design.
And we're going to end it there. Amanda, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you, Victor. This has been wonderful.